Hey guys, and welcome back to the New Tennis Era podcast. My name's Anthony Hirsch. Today I'm going to be talking about and breaking down the Madrid final where Casper Ruud finally got his hands on his very first Masters trophy. He got the win over Jack Draper 6-4 in the third set. I'm going to break down exactly what happened in the match. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new to Quality Shot Tennis. Don't forget to like the video as well. After 7 attempts, Casper Ruud finally breaks through and wins his first big title. He's been to 7 big finals in the past. Hasn't worked out for him in any of those occasions, but here it definitely felt like this was a chance. Jack Draper has been playing amazing tennis, scary, fast improving. His tennis this very week was just very impressive, the way that he's been playing, but Casper Ruud has looked awesome all week too, and I would say looks much more comfortable moving on the surface than Jack Draper, so I would have felt like Casper Ruud would feel like this is the opportunity, right? He's had so many attempts, but this feels like the chance. He gets it done, breaks back into the top 10, gets to number 7 in the world. In this match, he hit his forehand so well, running after every ball, defending so well, and neutralizing Jack's offense amazingly with defense. His footwork is so good, anticipation, high IQ. Like I said, just hustling and digging out great shots, and he didn't really let Draper's offense and great shots that he hit intimidate him at all, which was essential. Absolutely essential. Also, Ruud served so well. He won 81% of his first serve points. Casper served fantastic, and that was a big key. This was the first meeting between these two guys, which is pretty unusual for a Masters final. You don't really see big finals where players haven't faced each other before very often at all, because usually it's top players that will have a lot of head-to-head meetings because they're usually meeting in later stages of tournaments. But yeah, this was the first time that these two played, which also made it interesting with these two feeling out each other's games. It's also, I think, two players that play in a pretty different style for the most part. Ruud much more crafty and a little bit more reliant on defense, while Draper is obviously very much a pace generating kind of player who usually is more reliant on his serve, or at least serves bigger than Casper. But here, their first serve speed was about the same. Draper only served, I think, 2 kilometers per hour faster than Casper. Casper was serving big, he was serving very good. And it's something I would say about Casper is that I think on these courts, particularly his kick serve that he uses quite often is quite effective on the high bouncing courts, and also obviously just the high RPMs that he has on both wings, particularly his forehand, is helped by these courts. And he just moves so well, which facilitates so much for his game. Casper Ruud beats 3 top 10 players en route to the trophy. He beats Daniil Medvedev, Taylor Fritz, and Jack Draper. Draper coming into the match, there were some patterns that were going to work well in his favor. For one, just the fact that it was going to be Draper's forehand to Ruud's more attackable, easily broken down backhand was going to be a lot of the rallies. Unless Ruud could turn that around and dictate more with his forehand, which honestly we saw that Ruud was able to do a lot of that. Draper, I think one of the reasons that he's had a lot of success this week and on these courts is that he doesn't really mind hitting above chest or shoulder height on for either wing. He even sometimes kind of does this thing where he puts a lot of his body weight into his backhand, kind of leaning forward in an interesting way. But I think that's partially why the high bouncing courts in Madrid do him well. You wouldn't really expect him to have success on clay, but he was actually moving pretty well this week, not as well as Casper, but moving pretty well. And definitely the faster nature of the courts also helped over just regular clay. And in the match, he was hitting over his forehand, flattening it out so often, particularly inside out, to great success. But Casper Ruud was having a lot of success himself as well with, like I said, constant depth that is so difficult, and he just didn't let Draper have anything. His defense to offense here was just fantastic in this match, and a lot of positive positive kind of affirmations for Ruud, and it definitely seemed like he was very calm, very comfortable, and very confident, you would say. And he was also bold and gutsy, and I think that sometimes the problem with Ruud in past finals is that he didn't take enough chances in the big moments when it truly mattered. He didn't go out of his comfort zone potentially enough, but he felt maybe comfortable enough in this matchup, or at least on the surface compared to Draper, that he felt like he could take more risks. But I also really like the fact that he just didn't let Draper's peak shots intimidate him, which I feel like it's easy to let that happen, because when Jack Draper's greatest shots are unbelievable, but sometimes you have to just say too good. Sometimes you just have to say, okay, well, if he does that every point, I'm very happy for him to win this match, because I gave my all. I couldn't have given more. But the trick is that nobody is going to hit shots at that level over and over and over again unless you're playing Federer in 05, in which case, bad luck. Casper Ruud, I think a good example of this, I'm going to go in key points in the match in a little bit, but a key point, but a key example, I should say, of Ruud kind of having this kind of good mindset that I saw throughout this match. I think this is a good example of it, is Ruud double faults early. It does 2 consecutive double faults to give away a very early break. Draper quickly goes up 3-1, even though the level is pretty even outside of those 2 gifts that Ruud gives to Draper in those 2 consecutive double faults. Draper holds to go up 3-1 in the first set, hitting this massive backhand cross court, which is really a disappointing start to Ruud. He's nowhere near this backhand, and Ruud, this is off a Ruud forehand, and Draper is able to step in and still be aggressive, and this is a pattern that would potentially ruin his shot at finally grabbing a first big title in 7 tries. And he just calmly kind of applauds, says too good, moves on. I think this is a good example of kind of where his mindset was at. He goes down 3-1, and he's still kind of backing himself, and he was constantly just applauding Draper shots and just going to the next one, because Draper was a little bit more up and down, and particularly at the end of this match, Ruud won the race. He was much stronger at the end of this match, and he was certainly not as tired, I think. Ruud's stamina is so good on clay. This is his 18th clay court title. He loves playing on the surface. He's a different player on the surface. I think he's a top 5 elite player on the surface, if you really look into it over the last 3 or 4 years, no doubt, and at the moment. And I want to dig into key points now and talk about exactly what I think happened in the match. But just want to say big congratulations to Casper Ruud, because it is a very deserved first big title for him. And now I'll talk about key points in the match. So we start at the 1-1 game that I was talking about earlier, where really it was just 2 nervy consecutive double faults giving away the game from Casper, which was a sign of the early jitters like we've seen from Casper in the past. This is a huge match for both players, a career-changing match for both players, no matter the result. Jack Draper, it's not particularly obvious that he's going to end up winning a Masters title on clay if he doesn't win one here in this match. So this is a big moment for him, and also obviously such a statement. It's a pretty big statement anyway, just to make the final. But it's a pretty big statement for him to if he was to win 2 titles, big titles back to back on outdoor hard courts and then on clay. It would be a huge statement. Particularly also in Indian Wells in Madrid, a court that plays pretty slow, a slow hard court and a fast clay court. It would be a big deal for Jack, and it would be a big wake-up call to the rest of the tour that this guy is going to be particularly hard to beat anywhere for the next 10 to 15 years. And for Casper, obviously, just finally trying to break through the door and win his first big title. There's not much more to say than that. And I will say, this was a very high-level final. Despite this early game that I'm talking about here, obviously there were jitters from both, but overall, there were some really great rallies and shot making, and I thought the level was extremely high. And I really don't think we've seen a high-level just generally, objectively, high-level final that's gone 3 sets, and the third set is somewhat tight since late 2023. It's been a minute. Since Cincinnati, Alcaraz versus Djokovic 2023, Shanghai 2023, Hurkacz Rublev, those 2 back-to-back third-set tiebreakers in Masters finals. I don't think we've seen that since then. Musetti versus Alcaraz in Monte Carlo was tight, but Musetti was injured for the third set. It was practically a 2-set match. And then there are other examples of somewhat close finals, but this one I feel like was high level. 3 sets, close third set is something that we've been missing from the men's game to make Masters tournaments something to look forward to and exciting. So I'm glad that we got it. So I will say that going ahead of talking about these specific points, I just want to say that a lot of it was very high level from both. That being said, 2 consecutive doubles from early on from Casper, showing some early nerves and jitters from him. Then one of the key points that I want to talk about here in the first set, 4-5 game, Draper serving for the first set. And this is another example of jitters. Draper double faults from up 30-15. And then after this, for the rest of the game, Ruud's forehand just gets so good. This is a huge game. Obviously, Draper trying to start off the match on his terms, on his serve, where he usually backs himself. But 30-all, Ruud's forehand just turns up to a 10. And it just shows how underrated and ferocious of a weapon Ruud's forehand is, especially on clay. And what happened is at 30-all, 5-4, 30-all, Draper serving, Draper is trying to build out the point, and he hits, which potentially Ruud is more comfortable with doing on the surface than Draper is, but he tries to build out the point. He hits it to Ruud's forehand, maybe to pull him more out wide or trying to, before hitting it to his backhand, which is obviously Ruud's far weaker wing. But Ruud hits a big shot on his forehand with a lot of spin to Draper's forehand. He gets an error. It's a bad error, but it's an example of Ruud's forehand just being such a sneaky weapon that it's very difficult to get any breathing room when you're hitting to that shot, even trying to build out the point when you're in control. Ruud's defense to offense, even if he wasn't hitting, absolutely amazing, breath. Sometimes he was, really, but so even if he wasn't hitting absolutely just amazing winners out of nowhere, he was, when you were getting no breathing room when you're hitting to his forehand, he was amazing in defense to offense in this match. Really off both wings, but obviously particularly on the forehand. And just like on break point, after he wins that 30-all point off the Draper forehand error, he stays in control with his forehand, getting constant depth. I don't think he hit a single forehand in this match that was landed in front of the service line. He gets constant depth, and he's just being clutch, calm, going for it, giving Draper no breathing room, and he just looks confident. And he gets the break for 5-5. And then 6-5, 30-all in this set, I think is a good example of where both guys were at mentally in terms of confidence and risk-reward. Draper, well, first of all, Ruud gets the serve back, which is a big deal for him. I mean, Draper was not getting a whole lot of free points on first serve as much as he would have wanted. He was getting some, particularly on the ad side, but not as much as he would have wanted, particularly on the deuce side. But Draper gives a chance for Ruud to attack one of his forehands as he hits this kind of high backhand +1 shot. And Ruud comes to net, which is a bit of a gutsy play. It's not obvious that this is going to be a winner or something, or he's going to be able to follow it up for a winner. Meanwhile, Draper wasn't willing to give up some court as a risk to hit a more effective forehand than he was able to do with his backhand, which was a pretty high shot. And it just kind of shows that Ruud, well, first of all, Draper needed to do that because once Ruud got the forehand, he was, especially because he was willing to come in, it was a very advantageous play for Ruud and point for Ruud, and he was in control on Draper's serve. So that's not going to be a good pattern for Draper. And then actually a successful play for Draper generally in the match was on the ad side, hitting a big kick serve out wide. He was getting this ridiculous angle nearly every time he hit this serve that landed right on the sideline. And it's the most annoying thing playing a lefty in tennis. Just the way that they, on the ad side, the way that lefties can serve an angle out wide on the ad side. But Ruud puts up this Hail Mary big lob that lands perfectly behind Draper, and then Draper just hits this forehand wide. It's an awkward point. Ruud, maybe you could argue, gets a little bit lucky here, but it just shows also, though, that Ruud is taking more risk than Draper, even hitting this return. Like, he's trying things out. He's coming to net. He's giving up court. He's running after every ball, running everything down, willing to put himself in tough positions, and then playing defense to offense. And he's just moving so well, and also, like I said, just being so effective behind his serve. And it's really rewarding to see Ruud play an actually bold, risky final in a big tournament, because that's not really something we've seen from him. So that's a big deal, I think. In the second set, we stay on serve until Ruud plays a bad game at 3-3, where he just misses some forehands, and Draper takes charge with his own forehand. Draper doing a good job at this point of returning and getting into neutral or aggressive a little bit more quickly. And a couple service games nervy like this from Ruud. Also at 5-3 in this set, he plays a very similar game, kind of just ready already for the third set. Just kind of throws away the 5-3 game to give away the second set. So there were a couple service games like this from Ruud where the errors came in clusters, but it wasn't too bad because most of the match was consistent for Ruud. And like I said, the general service numbers he put up were very good, but definitely a couple games like this he would have preferred to not play. But it also, like I said, just comes with just regular nerves, like playing in a final like this, which is such a big moment for your career. I will also say that Draper is able to was playing gutsier at the end of the second set, and I feel like with credit to Ruud, I feel like part of what happened in the third set where things changed from how things were going at this point in the match was that Draper started to get tired. He started to get more tired. I don't think Draper's stamina is as good as Casper. I don't think he's used to these moments as much as Casper is. He certainly is not. So I think that's partially what happened. But Draper was coming to net with success here and just playing more gutsy. And yeah, we go to a third set with Draper not really having to do all that much at the end of the set, although he is playing more aggressive and a little bit better. And then the third set, these are really where some of the most key points occur. So the third set, the most important points in games of this third set by far are like the first 3 or 4 games of the set. A lot of long deuce games at the set where it's really unclear who's going to take charge. Both guys saving break points and finding their ways out of games. At 1-1, the story of this game, and it's really important what happened in this game, even though Draper ended up holding, even though obviously Ruud won the set at the end of the day. Casper has multiple break points, has great success on the deuce side, returning very, very well. And he's doing a great job getting into rallies, longer rallies. Obviously, in this match, the longer rallies were overall favoring Ruud. And they were ending on either Casper Ruud winners or Draper unforced errors. But on the ad side, he gets on the defensive immediately. Draper is doing well to hit first serves, and the same pattern of just the kick serve out wide. Ruud, for the most part, is holding a very defensive, deep court positioning, and Draper is just able to come in and attack it. And Ruud is really unable to return the shot without he's trying to hit his forehand. He's really unable to hit a forehand return here. He's mostly hitting backhand returns, and he's just not able to find a way to win the points on the ad side, so Draper escapes. And then at 2-1, Ruud actually saves a couple break points, and I'm just going to talk about one of those break points where Ruud comes in with this big loopy forehand off a short backhand return from Draper, and he's coming into Jack's backhand, and the backhand under pressure, he hits it into the net. I feel like Jack's backhand, when he's trying to be aggressive, especially when he's in a defensive position or push backwards, it doesn't really work that well. But Ruud's guts to constantly come to net, even under pressure. This wasn't obvious that it was going to be an advantageous play here, but he puts Jack under a lot of pressure, applies a lot of pressure, and I don't think Draper, I think this is especially true because Draper, I don't think had it in his game plan that Ruud would come to net down the stretch as much as he did in this match. So, and with success, by the way, both players came to net with success. Ruud did it much more in the big points and when it mattered down the stretch of this match. And yeah, I mean, this is a backhand that Draper definitely wishes that he would have made. But like I said, when he's kind of falling backwards on the backhand and trying to be aggressive, it doesn't work that well for him at the moment. His backhand has improved over the last year by a lot, so that could still continue to improve. We'll see. But Ruud, that was a big deal for Casper, is the way that he played points like that. Because if he loses that point, suddenly it's 3-1, just like the first set, where Casper actually came back from 3-1 the first set. But he would be down 3-1, Draper serving, so it could have been a very different third set had that happened. And then at 2-2, immediately after that, Ruud breaks Draper with, you know, gutsy forehand hitting, taking advantage earlier in the rallies. Draper's missing his own forehands. But Ruud taking the same initiative to come to net, and he just closes off the net so well. Big shout out to Ruud for the way that he was hitting his volleys at the net. Draper is actually up 30-love in this game, but he didn't hit a single good first serve until break point. He just looked more tired serving at this point. And he's just allowing Ruud to get good looks. And when he does hit a good serve on break point, Draper steps off a forehand earlier in the rally. And Ruud hits a pretty deep backhand down the line, which is a good sign for him that he's able to do that against the Draper forehand. And then Draper misses the next shot. So volleys, backhand down the lines, hitting pretty deep, were pretty good for Ruud, and definitely he was taking more chances than Draper and taking more chances in losing some points and taking more risks in order to win other points. He just looked more comfortable and was more willing to take those risks than Draper, who looked like he had to force a little bit more. And then Casper in the last game, just so aggressive with his forehand, even when it was a little bit difficult or defensive, which is something that he was definitely much better at doing, the defense to offense here, especially because his movement was able to facilitate that for him, and some big forehand winners from Ruud to finish off, which was awesome to see as well. So Casper Ruud gets a first Masters title. That was my breakdown of the final of Madrid. Tune in next week for coverage of the Rome event as well. Tennis doesn't stop, doesn't slow down, and then obviously we have Roland Garros on the horizon as well. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys at the next one.